Fat Joe. Yeah, he was obviously Fat Joe, right?
Just Joe now?
He's just Joe. He was close to 400 pounds at one point. He's looking pretty slim. Elon Musk on Christmas Day said, thankful for Ozempic Santa. I think he used Mounjaro, but it just sounded cooler. More and more mainstream celebrities are like saying, I lost all this weight using Ozempic. I think the biggest issue right now is it's not really normal. It's still considered like a cheat code. Yeah, you can take these drugs, you're cheating. The fitness industry made me think of like, oh shit, Ozempic. It's just cheating, you're just cheating with your clients.
I think the whole notion now is starting to disappear more and more that everyone who's overweight is just lazy. We've seen people that have come to us for help, unbelievably successful in so many other areas of life. If they were lazy, they wouldn't be in that position, right?
People talk about you lose like 30-40% lean mass if you take weight loss drugs.
If you diet without strength training or eating enough protein, you lose lean mass as well, right? It's the same thing.
If you don't take it for life, then the effects stop. That's exactly the same with lifestyle change as well. Like, you can have to keep doing something forever. Oh, your face starts looking really gone. Yeah,
Ozempic
that's
face.
what bodybuilders call like Skeletor or skeleton face.
Will it just become the norm that every fitness company offers drugs?
And maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think fitness companies will necessarily, unless they start combining with doctors and things, and it's just another tool in the toolbox.
Once it's an over-the-counter pill like Vitamin C, that's when the whole game changes. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing everything to do with Ozempic or, in general, modern-day weight loss drugs. So one thing we've been hearing more and more of, whether it's with our members, whether it's with people potentially interested in joining, is what's the deal with weight loss drugs? I've been on Ozempic, but this happened, or I'm on Ozempic, this happened, or I'm thinking of doing it. All these different thought processes that people are having. So I thought today we haven't really put up any content on Ozempic, weight loss drugs in general. So what I want to do today is effectively do a deep dive on all things weight loss drugs, everything from like the general overview of how they work, what they are, all the way to pros, cons, and then ultimately what our stance is on using them and the different types of versions. So it's something that's growing exponentially in the last few years, and the popularity of it is just going through the roof. I don't know if you guys have seen it coming into the mainstream more and more, but more and more mainstream celebrities are like saying, I lost all this weight using Ozempic. I think Elon Musk on Christmas Day put a post out on Twitter which said like Ozempic's thankful for Ozempic Santa or something like that. I think he didn't use Ozempic. I think he used Mounjaro, but it just sounded cooler. So he said that. Obviously, he's one of the most now powerful men in the world, and he's sort of talking about it, which only leads to people taking more curiosity into it. I was watching an interview the other day. Do you remember Fat Joe? The rapper who sang lean back. Like he was obviously Fat Joe, right?
Just Joe now?
I think
just
he
Joe?
used at one point. Yeah, he's just Joe. He was close to 400 pounds at one point, but he's looking pretty slim. And he said he used I think it was Ozempic or one of the similar ones initially to help with his diabetes, but obviously as a result of it, he lost a shit ton of weight as well. So it's more and more popular. And what we want to do today is give like a balanced approach on weight loss drugs and then our take on it. So before we dive into like the pros and cons, why don't we kind of give an overview of what exactly they are, like the most common household names. I've mentioned Ozempic quite a few times, but it's not just Ozempic. They're about 3 or 4 like household names now. What they are, and then from a high level perspective, in layman's terms, how they work, why they called weight loss drugs.
Yep. You mentioned Ozempic, you mentioned Mounjaro, another one is Wegovy. I think those are the most like common ones that we're hearing of these days. And like to put it really simply, they mimic GLP-1, which is a hormone that is triggered with eating and whatnot. It just it promotes the pancreas to secrete more insulin to get blood glucose out of the blood more efficiently and more quickly. And that seems to really, really help with appetite regulation, which from what I've seen is like the biggest impact that these drugs have, is that it just has crazy effects on appetite suppression. So that's really their main mechanism when it comes to just, having their sort of effect on, weight loss over the long term. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. Anything you would add, Ed, AV?
Yeah, the hunger suppressant side of things seems to be the biggest thing. I think there is also just independent of that, an improvement in insulin sensitivity, and also, and I don't know the exact mechanism for this, but there seems to be also improvements in other behaviors. So let's say someone is overweight, but they're also really into gambling. Their desire to gamble also seems to come down as well. So it also seems to be coming like these reward pathways as well seem to just be getting altered as well, which aren't probably as central or primary as the the hunger suppressing kind of impact, but seems to be another thing that's just going to help with that attempt to lose body weight.
Well, it's that brain reward system it impacts, right? And if it makes food less compelling, you're less likely to sort of revert to it in that moment of need. And that's probably why gambling and those other things are similar, because ultimately it's vices.
Impulse control. Yeah,
impulses, vices. So there's two pathways then, right? There's the brain, and then there's the digestive sense. And generally speaking, it's the reduction in satiety that helps someone not think about food as much. I also saw some stuff around like reducing food noise. Have you come across that much?
Yeah.
You know, that whole idea of like thinking about food.
Yeah.
What's the mechanism going on there? Is it similar to the brain?
Yeah, well, it still seems to be relatively unknown why that happens. That seems to be more of like an anecdotal response. But yeah, if it's having the same impact on the brain, like with the whole reward system thing, it's just food just doesn't feel or seem as appealing as it once did, you know? And it's probably a lot of things that people that have been lean their whole life take for granted, is that, you know, food is just food and you have it, you just move on. Like the way I'm seeing it is that a lot of these individuals, they taste food in a way that is just so overpowering and so overwhelming. And I think this is what they mean about that food noise and that food reward, right? So if you can dampen that whole thing down, which, yeah, from what I've seen so far, they don't have an exact mechanism as to why it's happening, but it is, which I think is the most important thing.
Wow. Okay. And then what about this digestive tract? Like, how exactly does it slow it down? How does it slow down the gastric emptying?
I think it just slows down how quickly food passes through the system, right? So that seems to just be the general mechanism. Really, it doesn't seem to move as quickly through you, meaning you're going to be fuller for longer. It definitely, in my opinion, it sounds like it's got something to do with just how it controls blood glucose release, right? If it's slowing down how quickly glucose is going to the system and just going around, that is naturally just going to bring down the whole gastric emptying side of things as well. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But again, that can also be a side effect that we will probably touch on later.
Yeah, the digestive system. Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. So that's an overview of what they are and how effectively they work. What is the research showing that they've helped with the most outside of weight loss and appetite control?
Diabetes as well. Blood glucose management seems to be pretty up there as well. Depending on the drug, one of them could potentially be a little bit more favorable towards blood glucose management. Another one seems to be more related to weight loss or fat loss. Mechanisms are very weird in that way. Like not really sure why one works better for the other, but they seem to have just a similar path of action, or just some people have noticed more weight loss with, say, Mounjaro, from what I've seen in the research as well, you know, and, you know, up to levels of, you know, bariatric surgery type weight loss, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so
it's getting close to that, right? It's getting pretty close to bariatric.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah, interesting. Is there any research suggesting that it doesn't work for people?
There's always going to be individual response, right? So as with any drug, I think that the how it works with each person is going to vary. But from what I've seen, most people are still getting at least a 5% loss as a minimum.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Still pretty good. Like, it's really good, to be honest.
That's with no focus on diet, right? Or focus on, it's just literally just taking the drug and seeing what happens.
Potentially, yeah. And I think it's up to 25, 30% as like a max, which is over 6 months, which is pretty good. But yeah, it's going to vary from person to person. From what I've seen, I haven't seen anyone say that it hasn't. I've seen a few people say it hasn't worked for them, but not too sure why that is. But for the most part, it seems to be pretty effective for most.
The thing is also in that is that it's not like it's just a one set thing, because there is also, you can alter the dose. So different people can be on different doses. And then it probably just comes down to matching up the dose with potential side effects that you get to try and find your sweet spot if you do use it. So yeah, even if it doesn't work for someone at X dose, maybe they just require a little bit more in order to get the effects they want.
I mean, if you look at like most of the research, I mean, I think nearly every research paper group has showed that if they use the drug and they're doing exercise and they're doing a diet approach as well, and they keep doing that, they not only get the weight off, but they keep it off quite easily as well, which is pretty insane, right?
Yeah. I think the best way to look at these things is that they make the process easier for people, or they make it more manageable, right? So you still have to do the things that are going to allow you to get in a deficit and all that stuff. So it just, dampens down food noise, improves satiety, all that stuff can just make the whole journey a lot more manageable for a lot of people. So it's not like you just can take it and then just do nothing, right? So
I think the reduction in food noise is really interesting, and I think that area of research will be big for general weight loss, because that's the biggest one for most people, especially when you're a stress eater or an emotional eater. If that doesn't even come on your radar, can you imagine how much that can change your life?
But
it just doesn't appeal to you.
I guess when you're getting that food noise in your head, it's probably caused from either being hungry or wanting that kind of reward, like, or that comfort. And if it's knocking both of those off, it's like, where would the noise even be coming from potentially?
Okay, so we kind of shared a lot of the benefits. What are some of the limitations then? Like, what can't these drugs do?
They can definitely help make all these other things easier, but like, you still have to do the behaviors. You still have to, get the lifestyle factors in. You still got to alter your diet. You still got to, you still got to do all these things. It's just a lot more manageable, right? So you can't just, I think a con is maybe people assume that if I just take that, I'll just do whatever I like, and maybe that can work for some people, right? Because maybe what they like doing was the whole food noise thing that we're talking about. If, you start taking one of these medications and now you don't even want to even look at like a packet of Oreos, right? Maybe that, without even any conscious effort, is going to allow you to get pretty good results, right? But as we said earlier, that doesn't happen. Like, everyone's going to respond very differently and individually. So you still have to put in the work, especially if you want to maintain over the long term. You still got to learn the lifestyle, the habits, the good stuff. So I think that's a potential con, is if you just feel that if I just take that, I don't have to do anything else. Other than that, maybe a few side effects here and there, but
was one of a short video I saw on, I think it was YouTube, that was going around quite a bit, was around the whole muscle loss thing. People talking about, it's the idea of like, you lose like 30-40% lean mass if you take weight loss drugs. But the reality is, if you do it properly, and this is maybe we'll talk about later, but if you are strength training and you are eating enough protein, that bit kind of disappears.
Things though, we know if you diet without strength training or eating enough protein, you lose lean mass as well, right? So yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that was like a big sort of like, this is why you shouldn't take it, because of lean mass loss. But it's just the content.
From what I see,
right?
Most people, and this isn't me saying everyone needs to jump on it, but most of the people who have arguments against it, I think, don't understand that what happens when you just lose vast amounts of weight. Because most of the things they say, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, it's like, yeah, that's a product of losing a lot of weight. That's what happens. And so it's like, if you don't eat any protein, you don't resistance train, and you drop a load of weight, a lot of it's going to be muscle. But as you said, that's the same if you are on these drugs or not. Like if you don't take it for life, then the effects stop. Well, that's exactly the same with lifestyle change as well. Like, you can have to keep doing something forever. Your face starts looking really gaunt. Yeah, if you lose a load of weight and get really lean, we call that's what bodybuilders call like Skeletor or skeleton face, or this is like my shoot face or whatever it is. Like, in the grind, for most of us, it also depends on like where fat's distributed. Face gets sucked in a little bit. And I'm not saying there's no side effects from the drugs, but I think a lot of the ones that I hear most commonly, people say, this is really bad. It's like, okay, you've clearly never got lean before, because that's as part of kind of what happens when you do some of these things.
Yeah, and those same people are taking like copious amounts of gear as well.
Yeah, that whole thing around like, I think what you're basically pointing to is like the social and ethical feeling around the drug. Is that, I think the biggest issue right now is it's not really normal. It's still considered like a cheat code of like, you can take these drugs, you're cheating. And that, I think the best analogy I kind of think of is like when people take statins for cholesterol. Some people just have to take statins for cholesterol, even if they're living a healthy lifestyle. And if you come off the statins, your cholesterol will probably go up. Well, it will go up. So it's a very similar sort of approach. But right now, it's just so early that I think there's a lot of stigma around it, which is potentially putting people off using them.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially in the fitness industry. The fitness industry, I think, can mainly think of like, shit, Ozempic. Yeah, it's just cheating. You're just cheating with your clients, or you're just cheating with.
Yeah. I think the whole notion now is starting to disappear more and more, that everyone who's overweight is just lazy, don't care, gluttony, all that type of stuff. And it's like, we've seen it ourselves. Like, we've seen people that have come to us for help who are unbelievably successful in so many other areas of life. Like, if they were lazy or stupid or whatever it is, like, they wouldn't be in that position, right? So I think that message has to go. And I think it is starting to go more and more. But yeah, we still get those people who are talking about this being cheating and that it's a moral disservice. Oh, you can't even do it on your own. Where's the willpower? This and that. And it's just like, man, it's a tool that should be used for the right person at the right time, just like any proper medication. You know what I mean? Same as a statin, same as an antidepressant, same as whatever you need to help, whatever you need to use to help you get through what you want to get through. Like, it's a tool, And I think when we attach these moral judgments to these things, it just never ends well. So,
basically, long-term dependence. Like, if you don't change your identity or lifestyle changes, you're going to need to use it for the rest of your life.
Yep. Just like any drug, right? So, but it's still early in research as well. Like, we still don't know the long-term effects of using that for an extended period of time, right? So that's still very, very unknown. But that's all the more reason if you did eventually want to get off them, if you learn to adopt those habits, those lifestyle behaviors, accountability, all that stuff for like years on end, I think you'll be in a much better position to then potentially come off them if that's what you wanted to do, right? So, I think it'd be very difficult, but I don't see why not.
Yeah, all the research says like if you come off it, 75% of the weight's back on like in a year's time. But it's like if you finish a diet and then just go back to your old weight.
Exactly
you're
right.
Gonna get it all back.
Exactly. Yeah, as Ed said earlier, like all these things that people are pinning on these medications is the same thing that happens without the medications. So the arguments seem to fall short very, very easily.
So why would you said like if you were to come off it, why would you not want to come off it?
Why would you not want to come off it?
For me, it comes down to a few things around there's cost, which at the moment is quite high. I think over time, I think this whole moral thing around it is going to come crashing down very quick, just because that's just taking a selfie was seen weird maybe 10 years ago. Now it's like you can't walk across the street without seeing someone do it. So I think that will normalize. As it becomes more popular, the price comes down as well. I think it's a bit like, the first iPhone that ever comes out is so expensive. And then actually in relative terms, it drops down. So I don't think that'll be such an issue long term, but you're still probably going to have to pay for it unless, I don't know, maybe it start rolling out on the NHS or whatever.
Is it on the NHS?
You might be able to do it now, but I foresee, and what do I know really, but like I could see this being like really widely used just as like, in future kind of thing. Potential accessibility issues. Again, I think if there's demand, I can't see these drug companies not fulfilling that because from what I hear, drug companies seem to quite like money. So I don't think they will be the bottleneck for too long. But there could always be issues with that. And I don't know, certain countries are making it more than others and whatever. Like, I don't know, go conspiracy theories, but do you know what I mean? Like you're leaving yourself dependent on needing those things. The stigma thing, I think I said will drop over time. But I think there's also probably the main one is just like the self-efficacy kind of element, which I think probably just depend on different people's opinions. But do you want to have to rely on a drug or not? And I don't think there's like a good or bad thing to that. But I think for some people, they like that feeling of being more self-efficient, having higher self-efficacy. Then maybe others still value that more. So I think that's probably the main kind of reason why someone wouldn't want to. And the side effects is probably another one at the moment where depending on what side effects you get from it. But again, we're on like I know these drugs have been actually around for ages. Still in like focusing on diabetes and they come like more mainstream now. But we're still in fairly early iterations in terms of the long term, I think, of them. And so they're probably the worst. They're only going to get better. They're only going to get cheaper and the side effects are only going to get less. So I think although side effects might be a bit of a concern for some people currently, I think that's only as well just going to reduce over time.
Yeah, and the side effects mostly are around like nausea, digestive issues, maybe diarrhea. And they're different depending on the drug. Some people can be completely fine with one, have issues with the other.
I would have thought also though, that some of it's just how you go about living when on the drugs. Because if you eat your normal diet, let's just say it's Oreos, and now you're just, instead of eating 10 packs a day, you're eating 2 packs a day, or you actually change how you eat, potentially that's going to have it. Because when I look up the side effects, some of them must just be very high likely just directly linked to the drug. But some of it's also just, if you slash the amount of food you're eating in half or by 2/3 or whatever, the volume of food's going down, your fiber intake's probably going down. Like there's all of these other knock-on effects that are probably happening unless you're doing it in a kind of well thought out way. And so if you have a probably insufficient fiber intake anyway, you slash that in half, you're probably going to get some digestive issues. Is that the drug? Is that the fact that you're now just, and so you can't tell probably on everything, but I think a lot of these things are also just how you go about implementing them as well as the drug itself.
Yeah, I think I saw something around like hydration can mitigate the GI side effects. That's a big one. People just aren't hydrating. It just comes back to the transformation checklist, right, of nutrition.
Yeah,
but also
things that are good for you digestion-wise are usually going to be pretty good when you're taking Wegovy or these medications.
But they're also, like, let's say, like water content of food. I'm not saying this is all it, but foods that have a higher water content, more voluminous, not the kind of foods you're potentially going for if you're not feeling that hungry. So if you're not eating that many calories, but it's coming from calorie-dense foods, say like you are just eating Oreos rather than a salad, again, you're probably, that may well be impacting things quite a bit.
The cost is, I was just looking up now, in the US, it's between $1,000 and $1,300 a month if you don't have insurance.
That was actually a little bit lower when I checked it, like a few weeks back.
Yeah, it might be even more than. That's without insurance. Yeah, that's
without insurance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it might be even higher.
Right. Okay.
That's in the US. I'm not actually sure in the UK. I thought, for some reason, I thought it was prescribed on the NHS.
It could well be, but I think when I said it, more that wasn't saying that it's not on the NHS now, but I kind of view in my head, like I said, I don't know anything really, but I kind of think in 10 years' time, I could see like half the population being just on one of these drugs constantly and just getting it from the NHS potentially.
So it's on the NHS for type 2 diabetes, but you can't get it for weight loss.
So I can't go down, book an appointment before Malaga in a couple of months.
But I mean, a lot of people who have type 2 diabetes will probably have obesity as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Obviously, it doesn't work the other way around.
It's more like an indirect effect, right? So
yeah. That's interesting. So it's not there yet on that accessibility. I think the accessibility is a big one, and the cost. But I think the other one is I think most of them are injections right now, right? Maybe some people don't want to inject. I personally would feel a bit weird injecting myself every week.
I'd pass out every week. Yeah.
I think once it's a pill, once it's an over-the-counter pill like vitamin C, that's when the whole game changes.
Once they make it chewy,
probably won't happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it'll be in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've been seeing food companies capitalize on this whole thing as well, where they're just making food-friendly diets for people who are on these medications, right? Very smart, very clever.
In what sense? Well, I'm just saying, like, eat this when you're using Ozempic.
I didn't even look at the composition of the meals. It was just more like the marketing of it already. It was just like, this is Wegovy-friendly meals, or like a Wegovy-friendly meal plan type thing. Man, these people are ahead of the game, Yeah,
that's pretty big. I mean, I'm pretty sure Weight Watchers have moved towards using weight loss drugs. It's the most commercially successful weight loss company has been around for decades and decades, and they've shifted their whole model towards weight loss drugs to the door. So let's go on to where do they fit into like an overall transformation. So if anyone's listening to this so far, they're probably thinking, we're shipping drugs to everyone's doors at the moment because it's sounding like
use RMT10 at checkout for.
Just waiting for the code to drop. But where do they fit into like the RNT transformation journey as a whole? Like if someone's considering using weight loss drugs, but thinking, I just need to use weight loss drugs and I'll be fine, or if they're kind of debating between the two, where do they fit into this? Like, are they a sole solution? Do they have a place in a transformation journey? How does the whole picture? Let's discuss that.
I think there are a couple of other questions before that that come to my mind anyway. One being, are we talking about someone who just population level? Because I think this is also where some of the arguments I think don't always match up, is that are we discussing this stuff on a population level, or are we talking to people who are willing to make changes? Because often I think when the medical community talk about it, they're seeing the people that they see in hospitals every day who aren't into fitness, aren't willing to make changes, just struggling through life as it is, let alone trying to actually think about anything else.
Go on both levels. Yeah, talk about it on both levels.
And so for them, I think that's then like a bit of I think it's brilliant, and they're probably not going to consume enough protein, and they're probably not going to resistance train, but actually dropping the excess body weight for a lot of them, and not for all of them, and side effects, blah, 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 is going to be on an individual level, but it's probably going to have a net benefit a lot of time. And that's why I think when you hear a lot of like doctors talking about it so positively, then you go into the fitness industry where everyone we chat to, even if they're not in good shape, are at least interested. Like everyone listening to this got some interest in improving their health and fitness. Anyone who joins RMT, they're at least on some level open to making some changes. So I think that's a differentiating factor. And then I think the next level is also, are you wanting to use these drugs forever, or are you wanting to use them to get to a destination to then start to pull away from them? Because I think that then also plays into things a little bit more, because if you're willing to use the drugs forever, potentially, you might not get all the way to where you want to. If you resistance train, have a sensible diet and use them, your results are probably going to skyrocket beyond where they've been up to this point. Now, some people won't need any guidance with that. A lot of people still will need guidance in order to actually still get the food in a good place and the nutrition and the training in a good place. But I think if you're wanting to not use them forever and potentially either not use them at all or just use them as an aid to get you to where you want and then pull away from them, that's where I think it's really, really important to have guidance around that lifestyle change, because you actually need to shift that side of things. You can't just rely on the drugs on that forever. And I think also with those people, it's probably they're not looking to go from really out of shape and really embarrassed to just not embarrassed anymore. We're probably talking about now like the high performers who want to be the leaders, who want to go from okay or average to great. And then you are going to need some guidance, because just getting to the gym a couple of times a week and using these drugs isn't going to be enough to do that. It's probably going to get you not embarrassed at the pool, or it's probably going to have you not embarrassed wearing a t-shirt but if you actually want to love how you look at the pool, be in really good shape, perform your best, then just doing weights a couple of times a week and the drugs isn't going to be enough.
Yeah, and I think for people listening to this, they probably don't want to be associated or have an identity of someone who takes drugs to keep the weight off for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and I think they probably want to go to be great, not just I don't want my doctor to have a go at me every time, I don't want to be embarrassed, to just being average. I think most people come to us are wanting to step beyond that and actually, be really proud of how they look, how they feel, how they're performing, etc. And
yeah, I mean, they're not.
Okay, and if that's the case, then drugs may or may not be a tool in it, but the same things as Ivan said at the start still apply in terms of needing to change that lifestyle approach, so you don't have to rely on the drugs.
I think the area that could really help is if we just look at the 5 phases, up till adhering to a calorie deficit can just become so much easier, because that where people go wrong is maybe on the weekends and the evenings, all that sort of stuff. If they can suddenly have a feeling of finding it really easy to stick to a diet, I think you can get to checkpoint a lot quicker. You can probably, your rate of loss is going to probably be quicker on an average basis as well. And then obviously the work begins in probably the investment phase. Once you come out the consolidation, you build your calories up a little bit, then it could be an interesting period where you focus on getting the right habits and overall identity integration that you want to be able to stay off it long term. The good thing is though, if you take that 5-phase approach, you'll do a lot of the mindset, the habits, all that sort of stuff will be kicking in already. So when you do come off it, I think the challenge will be, okay, well, we don't really know this, right? But it's just speaking hypothetically, does that food noise come back? How does your response to cravings feel when you're a lot lighter and now you've come off it? So I think that's quite an interesting experiment, wouldn't it? It'd be like if you started RNT on drugs and then you came off it in the investment phase, what would the feeling be like? Like, would it be easy to integrate? Would it be difficult?
Yeah. I think where it will have a huge benefit for people is individuals that struggle with like binge eating. I think that's where this could really, really help, in my opinion, just to be able to dampen down that food noise, being able to dampen down those things, and then still have the strategies because you're still going to have to work through those things. You're still going to have to work through the stresses, have to work through the triggers, but it can just make that journey a lot more manageable for a lot of people. And I reckon that's where these drugs can really help. I think people that are struggling with that side of things specifically, I think that's where some interventions could really help. But I'll still advocate people still try especially with what we do here, give it a shot, because we get it all right when people come on board. Yeah, I've tried everything and I haven't got a result. It's like, well, have you really tried everything properly? So if let us help you, I still would give you your best crack here as well and see what happens there. And if that's still like a really big struggle and nothing is happening, nothing is changing, then let's maybe look down that avenue if that's what you want to do with your doctor. Obviously, we don't have a code yet, so but I still think give it a really, really good red hot crack first before thinking that you've tried everything, because we've heard that a million times.
Yeah, and then you may not need them, and I think that would, that's always going to be a better thing, right? To not need anything to maintain your weight or your body composition,
or with anything.
It's the same as we said before about the drugs. Like if you can keep your cholesterol in a good spot, blood pressure, whatever it is, without these drugs, you're not going to throw them in just for the crack, are you? But if it's that or not, then you weigh it up against the potential negatives, and then you kind of come out with a decision from there. I think just on the phases thing, it will be interesting to see how people use it through the phases. But I actually think potentially if you do go in, and dosage probably matters in this, and maybe you titrate up and down at whatever at different points. But I actually think with the challenges that people have in terms of identity and cementing a lifestyle change in investment, I think if you come into R&T on them, start very early, you use them throughout the whole of your process phase, I would predict most people needing to then remain on them for at least the first year of investment, because I actually think it's a really challenging time in that investment of trying to get used to that. And so if people already struggle with the idea of removing fat loss as the goal, getting used to just doing the do each day. So the thought of also pulling the plug on the drugs there, of also just like opening Pandora's box of all of like the stuff that they'd kind of like pushed away during that. Potentially it's even if you do get to checkpoint using the drugs, you're going to need to use them for at least the first 6 to 12 months of investment to lay those foundations and make sure that you are in a good spot without fat loss being the goal, to then start to pull them away. Because potentially if you pull them away also when you remove fat loss as a goal, which just seems to be a bit like messed with a lot of people's heads as it is already, that could be a real recipe for disaster. And it's probably going to vary person dependent, but
post checkpoint for sure, actually, when that goal is taken away, and that's when that hunger kicks in. We always hear it, people they double their calories and they're still more hungry than they were when they were dieting down. It's like,
when you have a goal, that's also a blocker of food noise, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Do you think there's a case for some people who are needing it long term just as a low level dose? Do you think that will just be a reality in 10 years' time where some people are just having to take it low level to be able to stay healthy?
And anecdotally, I've heard that work really, really well. So this is just anecdotally, we're talking about like end of one kind of things here. But if you are born as someone who just gets so much pleasure from food, because we don't all get the same pleasure from food, and you are just have a few of these kind of genetic kind of swings that just put you in a less favorable position to be lean. What's required to remain lean, especially if you're really that end of kind of the spectrum, might just not be realistic for you. Like the amount of just exercise you'd have to do, the amount of restriction you have to put in place. Like if for the rest of your life, you have to put in massive amounts of willpower every single day to not just gain a load of weight, that's just not a realistic way for anyone to live. And this is where it's like some people sit on the really easy end of the spectrum, and then we're all kind of spread out along that somewhere. It's kind of just the cards we've been dealt, like everything else in life. But if you're really far on that kind of unfortunate end of it, what you have to do may just be beyond what you're willing or is practical or realistic to do. And then maybe, no, I'm not saying this for everyone, but there will be some people out there who that's their only realistic chance of staying in a lean spot or like a healthy weight range, I'd have thought.
Yeah, interesting. So it'll be very interesting to see how this unravels in the next. How fast do you think it will hit mainstream? Or mainstream being like what we discussed in terms of accessibility?
I reckon 5 years minimum or max.
Okay, it'll be quicker than 5 years, I reckon.
You reckon?
I feel my perception's warped because I feel like this was mainstream like a couple of years ago, but I think it's because we were on time listening to stuff, and then it comes out. But yeah, I'd say about 6 months ago, my wife mentioned to me and said like, "Oh, you heard of this thing?" Like she mispronounced Ozempic or something. I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe this shit is real. Then like this is really hitting the fan now." But yeah, I think it's basically, I think just the it's probably logistical element of like actually the NHS and whatever other health providers around the world like getting things moved in terms of those processes, but then also just the stigma breaking down. But I think like the stigmas they seem such a big thing, but once they start moving, they can change so quick. So
it's like protein powders, right? Protein powders, 20 years ago were considered steroids.
Yeah.
And even now people are like, oh, you need to take protein shakes, but at the same time, it's also just a norm.
Well, same as mental health, right? Like remember what, early 80s or late 80s, early 90s, especially for guys, what do you mean? You're not sad. Just pick yourself up by the bootstraps, crack on. Like, what's wrong with you? So things have changed big time since then too, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
Have we had anyone who's started weight loss drugs whilst being with us? I mean, you mentioned we had that first person, right?
Just
Yeah.
recently. Yeah.
And just, do you want to describe like why and how?
Well, this individual was prescribed for diabetes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's someone
Oh,
that's
so
been
it's from a
struggling.
it was a diabetes prescription.
Yeah,
Fine.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. And this individual has been struggling with weight loss for a really, really good while, and nothing has really happened. And recently, we've adopted the plan to make it a bit easier to work with. And that person seems to be getting some really, really good results already. So yeah, that they've also mentioned reduced food noise. They can't even finish the food, and it's not very high in it's not very high in calories, and they're able to sustain that quite easily. It's not difficult at all, and it's just modifying the dietary approach to make it palatable, making sure they can still get their protein intake up, still micronutrient rich, and just simple meal hygiene stuff, being able to space meals out a little bit further away. We've gone with 3 meals per day. That seems to work well. But yeah, it's all going to be quite individual. And as long as they keep training, as long as they keep accountable, yeah, they've seen good progress so far. So it's been cool, been interesting.
That seems to be the main adjustment that needs to be made, just from what I've seen in terms of normally, if you are in a fat loss phase, you're trying to maximize food volume to stay as satiated as possible. Where now it's almost we're trying, and in order to try to make it as satiating as possible without going over your calories. Now we're trying to make sure we're getting in X amount of protein, fat, micronutrients, whatever, but in a way that's not too voluminous for them. Which is almost like the flip of it, isn't it? Like a challenge at the other end of the spectrum. But outside of that, would you say you would do anything differently if someone was on these drugs?
So nothing really changes outside of food volume. All the other recommendations are the same.
Yeah, yeah, and just communication, making sure they're okay, making sure any side effects, like obviously speak to your doctor, just let me know what's going on, so we can just modify a few things.
Why did the doctor prescribe this at this stage of his? How long has this person been diabetic for?
I think a good couple of years. They've been pre-diabetic for a really long time, and they were just really struggling with nutrition. They were really struggling with just sticking to a plan. That was all the information they gave me, and they just agreed to, hey, we're going to go on this. And I was like, cool, let me know what the doctor recommends, and we'll go from there and work together on it. So,
and one of the things, let's say this person wants to come off it in a couple of years' time, the biggest thing would be that food volume thing, right? That would probably be the most noticeable.
But that's something that we can just implement as soon as they get off it, right? So food volume in this individual can be used as a tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I think if you spend enough time embedding these habits, right, the way I see it, the real magic of these medications is that it's going to allow you to go more on autopilot and feel, how Ed was talking about that spectrum of people who can naturally stay lean versus can't. What I'm thinking is that these medications will naturally move people more towards that end, so they can just keep doing the things that they want to do, like habits wise, exercise wise, food stuff. And then hopefully, because the habits are so solidified, once they eventually get off it, they don't feel like like their behavior isn't really going to change much. Maybe they feel a bit extra hungry. Maybe they feel a little bit different, but because they've spent so long instilling those good habits, because those drugs allowed them to, I think that could be powerful enough to allow them to slowly get off it if that's what they want to do. That's my thinking. But it goes back to what Ed said earlier, like you still have to have all those structures in place. You need accountability. You need people that are going to help build that lifestyle solution for you. So then eventually you can get off them if that's what you want to do.
And it's still going to be a test, because even if you build all of these habits, you haven't tested them without also the assistance of drugs till you take them off. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions of the fitness industry is that your rate of loss, so like how quickly you lose weight, dictates adherence, or like how well you're able to maintain it long term and all of that. And like, I don't lose too fast, or it'll all come back. Like, if you actually look at it, that's a load of rubbish. Like, actually, if it swings either way, the faster you lose it, the more successful you're going to be long term. What I actually see as being like the determinant of like how well you can adhere to a plan of things is your perception of restraint. So like how restricted you feel during a diet, and then also your perception of your progress. Like if you feel like you're not really feeling that restricted and you're making really good progress, it's probably going to be easier on lower calories than feeling more restricted and feeling like your progress is slower on higher calories. Now, perception is also in there because you could be making amazing progress, but if you think it should be better, you might still feel negative about it. And then the other way, someone who's moving like a snail but is so happy, their perception's actually really high. And that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why the drugs work so well, in terms of like the feeling of restraint so low, and you're seeing these really good results. So your ability to just keep going and adhering with this stuff is high. But when you pull that away, potentially that feeling of restriction to actually maintain your results or to keep losing weight, whatever you want to do, could very easily go through the roof. And now maybe that is kind of adjusted for by tapering off rather than just going cold turkey one day. But yeah, you've got to build up these habits, and then you've got to test them as you then pull back on the drugs if you want to take that away. And I'm guessing for some people that's going to be easier than others. But I guess only time will tell.
Has there been any body wars if you've been using this in dieting periods? Yeah, really.
I think from what I've seen, like, just from hearing here and there, the more like meatheady kind of ones I've heard haven't lasted on it long because they got so nauseous. Maybe that's because they're using so many drugs, they need so much food, they just can't get it all in.
And so much protein.
Maybe also mindset-wise, they haven't gone in at the lowest dose. I maybe guess. But I know, I don't want to maybe say this if it's not true, but I'm pretty sure Mike Israel's used it. And so I think some of the more like sciencey based guys have used it. And I think they've probably had more of a pleasant experience on it from what I've kind of gathered.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, guys, if you're in body, if there's any kind of drug that's going to help you look better or make the process easier, like bodybuilders are probably going to honestly jump on it, aren't they? So
it'd be interesting to know, like 2-3 weeks before like a shoot or a competition or whatever it is, like how it feels to be in the grind and the depths of a calorie deficit and like really shredded, because obviously that's a different feeling in itself, right? Not just low calories but with weight to lose, but low calories and not much to lose at all. Mm-hmm. How that would feel. You probably just feel quite numb in every aspect of life, right?
I mean, I personally think it would be very effective if you think about it. Yeah. I was going to say, you're probably still feeling the low energy levels, like the high fatigue, but maybe just not the hunger.
Yeah.
What's the whole thing with dopamine, like in terms of drive? Has there been much research to show like you're not as motivated and driven in life?
Well, for other things.
Yeah, just because it dampens
the reward system.
Yeah. Does that drive and motivation disappear from other areas of life, or?
That's a good question. I haven't seen anything on that. No. Good question though.
I've not heard anyone say it, but do you think that could be a effect of like, is the whole dopamine thing actually confirmed, or is it just a case, people aren't also wanting to gamble, so must be the reward system, must be dopamine? Is it like people assuming that rather than actually having connected the dots? I don't know.
Yeah. The other thought I had is like, is there a hormonal impact on any of it?
I think any hormonal impact that it's going to have is still going to be, the benefits you get from the drug are still going to outweigh so many of these other things for most people, right? But when you look at weight loss, like just losing weight, no matter how you go about it, seems to just do incredible things for your health. You know, that whole Twinkie diet guy got his blood, even his blood work was like perfect. Or his blood work was a lot better, even though he was eating Twinkies and protein shakes or even McDonald's or something like that. So just losing weight, regardless of how you do it for the most part, seems to do a lot of good for your health if you're going from a very unhealthy place. So, but hormonally, I haven't seen anything long-term. I've not seen any negative impact hormonally. Have you? Have you guys?
Nothing. I haven't seen anything that I wouldn't just think, that's probably just a case of just losing a lot of weight. But I think it also comes back to where are you coming at it from? Because if you're coming from the really overweight, just don't want to be obese anymore, the benefit of just losing a load of body fat is probably going to outweigh some of these negatives, and even if you don't do it as we'd advise, let's just say. However, the people listening to this, you're probably wanting a better trade-off than that even. Like you're wanting to also make sure you're hitting your protein. You're also wanting to make sure when you get your blood work back, you're hitting like micronutrient kind of goals and things like that. So it's one of those, when you make the trade-off for some of these people who aren't willing to make lifestyle changes, the fact that it's taking off a load of weight, probably just it's worthwhile, and you'll take some of the bad stuff that comes with it. But I think the people listen to this is like, you want a more refined approach because you don't want to lose muscle. So you're going to want to have a training program that's well constructed. You're going to want feedback on your form and your effort levels and guidance through that. You're also going to want someone to support you, or a system to support you in terms of your nutrition. So you are getting enough protein, and like the tweaks that you've made to the member you're working with there, Ivan, to make sure that you can still get in the stuff. Because yeah, if you're 500 pounds and you use the drugs and you only eat Oreos, your health will still improve because just the benefits of losing so much weight outweighs it. But if you're wanting to go and be great and this kind of like be a high performer and the stuff we've been talking about, it's not going to get you to where you want to be, of potentially like looking amazing or your health being in a really good spot. And that's where I think it's like the drugs alone for those kind of things isn't going to do it. And you need that methodical approach to go with it, and then also prevent further hormone like issues beyond what's just going to happen from losing weight.
You know, you said earlier around like people on a different spectrum when it comes to how easy it is to maintain weight. And you also said it's like the luck of the draw. Are you hinting at like the genetics playing a big part in this, or is it more environmental / what happened earlier in your life, your habits you formed early in life? Like, what were you hinting at then? Was it a combination, or were you suggesting a potential genetic thing?
Oh, I would say everything. I mean, I don't think there's any question like about genetics. It's just so widespread around everything. Like how basically every single thing in life has just been already impacted by our genetics. Like how much pleasure we get from exercise, how much drive we have to do it, how much we're willing to suck it up now to enjoy the pleasure, the benefits later, our other interests. Like it's so many avenues that's coming at. It's just like beyond kind of, you can't really even just go into every single thing, and they all impact each other. Like all of us here have probably got some things that are really beneficial for getting in shape, some things that aren't beneficial for it, some things are pretty neutral, and it's just kind of all just balanced out across what it is. And then, yeah, that sounds crazy. And then you throw it into the environment stuff. And I think, well, you like the saying, don't you, Ivan, like genetics loads the gun and your environment or your actions pull the trigger.
Yeah. I definitely stole that from someone.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's no hinting about it. Like genetics makes a massive difference. And it's one of those things that's worth being very aware of, but also there's no point sitting here crying about it because you can't change it. Your environment, you're in a bit more control to a point. But I mean, those two things really, it depends how deep you want to get on the rabbit hole as well. But I know there's a lot of people who talk out there that there's no even free will. We're not even in charge of our actions. It's the combination of genetics and environment. And that just
another podcast.
Yeah, that just dictates it. So you can go off on there. But like, yeah, there's the thought to not think they have massive factors. It's just like, it's crazy. Yeah, they're playing a massive role.
There's not much you can do about it, so you got to just focus on what you can control. Otherwise,
yeah. I mean,
they've got a code for that. It's a simple code. Just go to www.orientedfitness.com/pro and you can figure out how to do it without the drugs. Until then, of course we have. I don't know if it's going to be. I do think often, will it just become the norm that every fitness company offers drugs? Like, is that just like you join a program and you use the drugs as well? It's like an optional thing at checkout. But I guess it just depends how the next few years go.
I think it probably won't be that you do it in the same way. You don't currently sign up and just get blood pressure medication. I think it's one of those things that I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think fitness companies will necessarily, unless they start combining with doctors and things, it's probably a case that that's just something that a lot of people come already using or wanting to add on. And it's just another tool in the toolbox. And it doesn't mean that every member or every person out there has to use every single tool, but we've now just got another tool at our disposal. Do you want to use it or not? As with everything, just comes with the trade-offs. Is the potential benefits worth the potential negatives? You weigh that up, you make the decision, and go from there.
Awesome. I think that's a wrap. Whilst it sounds like it was an overwhelmingly positive approach to using weight loss drugs, I think it's just the context and the nuance that's important to realize and understand that, like I said, it is a tool in the toolbox. But ultimately, to get in shape and stay in shape and feel happy doing it and staying there is a big part of it's going to be in your identity, habits, your mindset, and doing it all along with or without the drugs. Can't escape that. So I hope that covers everything Ozempic.